47 million Americans rely on food stamps to put dinner on the table. That's 15% of the overall population. What are the consequences of the government proposed cuts to the program? For the next few minutes, we'll discuss that. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Comcast Newsmakers. I'm Robert Trainum. Joining me is Congresswoman Gwen Moore, Democrat from Wisconsin. Congresswoman, welcome to the program.
And thank you so much for having me.
47 million people, 15% of the population. That's a lot of people that rely on the federal government for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner. And in some cases, Congresswoman, that's their only source of nutrition. There is some talk here in Washington, D.C. that perhaps maybe that number should be, meaning the funding for it, should be cut. Why?
Well, listen, Robert, I think it's really important to realize that that 47 million number, 15% of the population, really tracks with the numbers of people who have fallen into poverty with the Great Recession that we're still working our way through. And in fact, food stamps were often the only source of income that many of these families had. The families that we're supporting through the food stamp program, 2/3 of them are elderly, disabled, and children.
So the most vulnerable in our society.
The most vulnerable and the disabled, the most vulnerable in our society. The proposal on the table is the Farm Bill, which proposes to cut $20 billion over the next 10 years, which translates into the loss of about of food stamps for 2 to 3 million families and 280,000 children who receive free or reduced lunch as a result of it. Also, in November, the loss of Recovery Act monies to the food stamp program will mean that all recipients of food stamps will lose about $25 a month, which is significant when you consider that the food stamp program already is not a full food supplement.
Congresswoman, there are some critics out there, some of your colleagues on Capitol Hill, that would say two things. One, let the states do this. They do a better job at the local level of caring for the most vulnerable in our society. And secondly, there's a lot of fraud, there's a lot of waste, and there's a lot of abuse, and we have to rein this in because, quite frankly, speaking of the children, we simply cannot pass along these soaring deficits for future generations.
Well,
your response?
To your first, to the second point, there's fraud, abuse in every program, and obviously, clearly, we ought to route it out. But the food stamp program, remarkably, is a very well-run program, despite the reality that there's fraud in every program. To the first point, let the states run it. That's really a way of saying, let's block grant the program. Let's not have it be one of these entitlement programs. There is a real effort within Congress to take away the entitlement aspect of all the entitlement programs, which is Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and food stamps, is yet another one of the entitlement programs. With a so-called block grant, that means that the states would get some sufficient amount of money. And so when that money ran out, it wouldn't matter how needy children are. In my district, 40% of children in my district receive food stamps and are poor. It wouldn't matter if that child's parents came to the food stamp office, there would not be a benefit for them under a block grant program.
Congresswoman, we got about 30 seconds left. What is the likelihood of the Farm Bill in its current state with the Republican-controlled House passing the Congress?
It is very likely that it will pass. We would have to hope that that this would not be reconciled with a Senate budget.
And the president's stance on this? Do you know where he stands with the administration?
I think that he is adamant that we should not cut a basic human need, and that's food.
And I assume we got 5 seconds left very quickly. You're going to fight tooth and nail on this.
Absolutely. I think eating is definitely a human right that we ought to preserve.
All right, Congresswoman Gwen Moore, Democrat from Wisconsin, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Comcast Newsmakers. I'm Robert Trainum in Washington, D.C. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.